You to
Oh, hello.
okay, well, here we are. Hello,
Hello.
hi.
Um, hi. So should we just quickly describe ourselves, just so
Yeah,
people know what we look like?
yeah,
Shall I go first?
yeah,
I'm Helena. I'm a white woman in the mid-30s, long brown hair, big specs, with tortoiseshell rims and a blue and white dress, with a wooden cupboard background. Do you?
Lewis, I have short, spiky hair, a bushy beard, blue eyes, white skin, and a blue and white top, and I have a white hotel wall behind me.
Nice, great. So, Lewis, I wonder if we should start by saying who, well, people probably know who you are,
Right.
but they might not know who I am
Okay. Yeah.
in the context of this as to why I'm the person asking these questions.
That's really good. Yeah. Do you want to fill that in or?
Yeah, I'll say that now, and that is, so I'm Helena Webb. I'm a dance artist, and on this project, on Lewis's phrases and footnotes, I have been rehearsal director. Is that what my billing is? Yes. So, shall we just plow in? Shall I ask some questions, Lewis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions. They'll be about both, and then some will be more specific about one or the other. But first one is, how did you come to make these shows?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question.
Coming with a big one.
Kind of almost feels like why, but you said how, so that's good.
Mm.
Yes. Well, I was part of a collective in Leicester, and we ran these work in progress nights. The collective was called Tetrad, and we kind of did multi-discipline. So we invited performance of all different kinds. But the four of us also wanted to use these work in progress nights to showcase our own works. So we invited people through applications and stuff, and then we also showed our own stuff. And for the first one, I did my first solo piece, and then we took it in turns. So 3 iterations of the night later, I had to make something else to show.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a little fire under me to make something, and that's what brought phrases, like pulled it into existence. And then the following year, the same thing happened, and footnotes was the
Great. So under some pressure, these shows appeared.
yes, under yes duress.
Great. Okay. Cool. Um. So so for me, I see a lot of themes around pathetic masculinity, and I mean that in like the broadest context of like what that could mean, like kind of pathetic, extreme toxic masculinity, or a pathetic, like truly pathetic, as in we empathize with masculinity. So was that something you went out to make work about, or was that something that kind of crept along, or would you even agree with that being a theme in either of these pieces?
Yeah, no, I would. Yeah. So my first solo piece was kind of more straightforwardly about this particular thing that you've mentioned, this pathetic masculinity thing. It was kind of about trying to be cool, and that the notion of that as a kind of I don't know, somewhat restrictive way to develop your personhood, and how that related to masculinity. And so that was the kind of grounding of my practice almost,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, when I started making stuff. So yeah, it kind of bled quite organically into these next things. It kind of was just the bread and butter of how I perform, and like the kind of material I was coming up with. um, yeah, it's kind of like not so well. Certainly with phrases, it doesn't feel so like straightforward to me, like how I arrived at a theme. a topic, it was kind of like throwing things at the wall almost, and then what ended up kind of, it was almost like a therapeutic process, because then I could look at the piece afterwards and I see what you're saying. I'm like, oh god, about deconstructing something of my relationship to male identity, and the problems inherent to it, and the tension and anxiety inherent to how I've interacted with that concept through my life. And then Footnotes similarly kind of approaching it from this like intellectual arrogant maleness, and something of the kind of I think in that one there's a kind of a sense of, I don't know, sometimes there's something of like academic theory being referred to in the masculine, and maybe quantitative theoretical ideas being referred to in the masculine, and qualitative things in the feminine kind of. I mean, I don't know where that idea comes from, but I feel like I've inherited that concept.
Yeah.
And this piece was kind of this expression of a frustration with being forced into this masculine quantitative understanding of the world around me. And also my parents are academics and my brother's an academic, and it
Okay.
like desperate frustration and a desperate clawing at a mode of communication that doesn't require so much dense wordage. I think that's maybe enough of an answer to that.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess from me as a viewer's perspective, there's but the shows work so well as a pair because they offer two very different viewpoints of kind of the similar conundrum in my mind. But we see panic, we see rage, we see loneliness, like, why am I such a twat, like pathetic, really like, oh god, so I feel like you kind of get through the whole gamut, and by the end of those shows there's a kind of like, okay, that's what that was. Whew. So I don't know, that's just a comment, not a question, but that's
Yes. I recognize that feeling.
Well, I guess leading on from Footnotes and talking about this kind of academic guy that you are in that show, I did have a question about whether that was modeled on anyone in particular. Like, is there like some teachers or, I don't know, famous people that you were like, this guy, I'm going to get some of that in this? Or was it like totally from imagination?
Well, to some degree, it was probably a bit of like my uni lecturers, a couple of them. That would be defamation. And then it probably is a little bit like also probably my brother a little bit in a way, even though like I actually really respect the ideas that are expressed by my brother's academic thoughts, and also my mum's.
Yeah.
My dad he's a bit more like me.
Okay.
So a bit more, I don't know what you call that. But yeah, it's like something of the tone of not pretentious, but someone who's like using language that like there's no reason you should understand it, and they're not taking you with them really, and they're kind of assuming but actually they've not started far enough back. So that's kind of my relationship with it. Certainly with my brother growing up, like he was running away with ideas and I was trying to catch up and not really getting it at all. And then also latterly in drafting scripts and stuff, I started looking at Jordan Peterson as a kind of person who does this very thing of like running away with, loads of different references to stuff which you probably haven't read, and using that as a grounding for an argument which nobody agrees with. So like you can't question me because I'm talking about Dostoevsky and I'm talking about
Yeah.
someone else that you can't even approach me until you've read those things. Go away and read these long books. And it's like, well, you shouldn't need to have that if your argument has some merit.
Any merit at all, really. Yeah. So then I guess another question is around absurdity and like the comic absurdity that is visible in both of these shows. And I wonder if that's like, is that, I haven't seen a lot of your other work. Is that how it always is? Are you interested in playing with that, like not quite slapstick, but quite feels very close, that kind of close madness almost?
Yeah.
I mean that in a praise way, just to be clear.
Doesn't go well with this beard and hair situation. Yeah. I'm into a kind of unhingedness in a onstage character. It's tricky, especially like when I was younger, I thought it was much easier. It's just like be a bit unhinged, whatever that means. Like, seem like you might do something, wild, and and then just exist with that tension with people. But as I'm getting older and as the world gets weirder in different ways, I'm trying to be more cautious about it. It's kind of like I don't know what this unhingedness is referencing, and trying to channel it into something which actually means something. So I think this toxic masculinity stuff is maybe that's a channel I found which I can get behind for a level of instability of character.
But there's also a lot around the kind of the like stories in footnotes about the baby. Like that goes in such a wild kilter. Because I agree, there's definitely this kind of unhinged madness, absurdness that happens within the characters. But there's also the context is also has these like, what? Where are we now? There's a baby? What's happened? Oh, this baby, what? Like, and maybe, I mean, you have told me where that baby story comes from, but maybe no one else will know and they would be interested to know.
Yeah. That's like straight up dream. That's like, I just transcribed a dream. And it seemed so strangely prophetic or informative that I thought it could be performance material, and then it did end up going in. Yeah, and it felt kind of weirdly appropriate as a really basic human anxiety around like really common stuff and really kind of base level stuff about like reproduction, care, what kind of person I see myself as, like am I a good person? Like a good person wouldn't have left his baby. So all of these doubts which are really ground level kind of infecting this thing which is, trying to make a kind of quantitative sense out of the theory. What's the question again?
I think it was just around whether absurdity is always in your work, and then we were talking about the difference between the kind of unhinged characters, whereas the like super abstract story, because there's also the story which I think it's an improvised story. So sometimes it was about Priti Patel and a rainbow of vomit, and someone else was there. Was it Prince? Someone else was there.
Prince. Prince went back to being Prince before?
I think they did, but I'm not sure. No, maybe not. There was a symbol that they used as their title. Maybe it's that. But yes, so that story also, every time I saw it was always super wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the score for that story?
I think it was like to have, well, initially it's kind of like this dots thing, isn't it? It's like have something that the dots can draw as a starting point. So what the hell is this? Sometimes it's bees, sometimes it's constellations, other things I can't think of now. And then have that go on some kind of like animated journey. So it has to move and have big things happening. And that's basically it. And if I can't describe it with large movements of my hands and head and legs, then that's not in the story.
That's great. That's such a direct score to have. If I can't do it with the body that I have, then it can't be in the story.
Yeah.
Which is interesting though, because you did have these rainbows of vomit and Priti Patel, which I didn't see you do with your arms and bodies and legs. That was
yeah, that's true. So
storytelling techniques.
So it is also encouraging imagination, I think, is a better base level of it. It's like to use this movement and word combination to imagine something that goes beyond my moves, or is drawn by my moves and words. So it's kind of that, and it's also like should be multi-layered, like shift scene, like from one place to another, and include a cast of characters who are maybe animals, maybe political figures.
Yeah, maybe people we know.
Yeah. There was a chunk in Edinburgh where there was this thing about 40 to 50 feral hogs. This thing on Twitter where people were talking about, well, I don't know what it was. It was someone making an argument for gun laws in America, saying we should be allowed guns because what if 40 to 50 feral hogs come to my house?
What an argument.
And it went viral. Yeah. And then I did something about feral hogs 3 nights in a row, I think. So you can also
nice
from Twitter.
I guess because it is improvised, you're gonna, your brain will absorb some new information that day, and maybe that's what's coming up in that moment, right?
Exactly.
And in terms of your practice more generally, the way that you make work and the way that you perform, does it always have elements of live improvisation within it? I mean, live improvisation, I think is what I mean.
Yeah, where do we draw these lines?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I've only made one other piece.
But you also perform improvisations as well.
That's true. Yes, thank you for feeding me that. Yes, I also do perform improvisations. Yes, and those are really great. I think there's something about inserting a.
They are. I wasn't laughing because they're not.
Inserting a kind of improvised section into a piece. I think with footnotes, it's really nice, but it also is like doing a long run in Edinburgh. It was quite anxiety producing because it's like, is it going to be as good as the one I did last night? And am I ready? Am I supported by this long run context to be imaginative in the moment like that? But when you do like a half-hour open improv, and that you're not bookended. You don't have to squeeze it into a 5-minute thing. Those are much more joyous, I find, because the whole thing is then created in the same methodology.
And it's all in that moment. Like there is kind of no point in criticizing or having any critical thought about it, because it's happening now, and it's happening now, and it's still happening now. Like and the idea that one might be better than another is not really. Doesn't quite work.
Yeah, the measurements. There's like, what measurement are you using to decide?
Yeah, and the delight in watching an improvised performance. I had a conversation with Andrew Morris the other day, and we were talking about the delight in watching a improvised performance is that a person is working it out for themselves, and we get to the pleasure of watching that working out. Whereas like with a performance like one of your shows that we're working on now, Phrases and Footnotes, we have those moments of workings out, and then we go back to some other world, which I love, because then you're like, what? Where? It like keeps pulling the rug from under our feet.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably slightly more complicated as a performer to keep switching from different hats.
Yeah.
Learning lots of text and then suddenly improvised and then back to sound cues and
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just a big switch. You have to put a lot of energy into changing gear.
Yeah,
it's perfectly doable.
It is. Well, I mean, you did it, didn't you? So I guess I would be interested to ask a question about how you feel it shifts from one mode to the other. So you did it in Edinburgh, you did a long run there, and now we made these films. And how do the two things kind of relate to one another from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the film is it's like such a different beast. And it's really nice to have it in this like really holdable form. Like the Edinburgh thing was like, I don't know, so the experience of doing it and reproducing it every night to unknown audience size and reception was such an anxiety producing thing. You know, it kind of carved them into a really essential form. Like I got really good at doing it and knowing what it was, which, you know, it was really nice for informing how we did the film. Because I could kind of like, after doing it in front of so many different audiences, my confidence in them became really less dependent on other people and more internal. So then when it came to, you know, really just doing it in front of you and Ali and Scott and Ellie, who were all working and not there to enjoy
it, but also enjoying it,
yeah, as a side effect. Then it kind of felt all right to kind of do it without the level of reception you'd get from an audience. Yeah, it's a tricky thing, because like I never would have made a film like that if it wasn't pandemic. So it's kind of like something which gets firmly suggested into your life, making a film of something during lockdown. But I'm really glad we did it, and I'm really proud of how it's come out. Yeah.
But would you like to return to performing it live as well?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think maybe I've exercised the demons of Footnotes a little bit, so it doesn't feel like something I'm desperate to do again. But Phrases, I want to do. I really enjoy doing Phrases. I really, think it can have more of a life. So I've kind of done a couple of applications for stuff, and we'll see what happens. But I'd love to do it again.
Well, as I said, when we were working together, from my perspective, working in prisons, I'm like, this would be amazing. The guys, I think, would have a really great reception. So, you know, prison tour, here we come. Cool. I'm just seeing if I've got any other questions. I guess I have one, but I guess maybe we've kind of passed alongside it. But in terms of the blend of text and of improvisation and of set material and the kind of absurdity and abstractness occasionally, do you have particular artists that you find particularly inspiring in those kind of forms, or inspired these two pieces?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yeah, it's like it's kind of patchy, the amount of shows that one actually sees. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
certainly in my history, it's like I go through patches of watching stuff, and I normally see lots of stuff at Edinburgh, and then I see like 4 other shows a year or something, and then obviously
Wow.
I haven't seen anything for a while now.
Mm.
But I mean, certainly, I think the idea of having the laptop on stage came from my housemate at the time, seeing his work, Nasi Vutsas, Bert and Nasi, their work is the lo-fi aesthetic was really integral to that. Tim Key, I love Tim Key's comedy, this very unhinged, absurd, kind of the characters he portrays.
Mm.
I mean, there's something I'm realizing now, looking through his back catalogue, there are some on the edge misogynistic stuff, which I kind of like go, okay.
Ah, disappointing.
It's always, you look back over someone who got big in the 2000s and you're like, oh, right, you have some deep rooted issues.
Yeah, not
Maybe,
all of them, but some of them do.
yeah, exactly. Seke, always an enormous influence in so many ways. I think, so much of my improv practice comes from seeing him do stuff.
We should say that his name's Seke Chimatengwende, in
Yeah.
case people don't know him.
Always been doing a very in crowd way.
Yeah, exactly. Dance gang. They'll
Yeah.
know Seke, but maybe other people won't.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Stuart Lee. So
You say it like, of course, like as if he's everyone's inspiration.
Ground level for all.
No, but I mean that makes sense, doesn't it? If you see Stuart Lee's work, you can see threads from all of those people, I think. Great. Okay. I think I've done all my questions. So unless you have anything that you'd like me to like set you up to say, then
I think that's perfect. That's really nice. I really enjoyed that.
yeah, that was lovely.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. So shall we shut the thing off? We say goodbye to everyone.
Sure. Okay. Goodbye now.
Bye now.